Try some makeup next time. What's up, YouTube? It's Alberta26. Today we're going to be talking about Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Shadow of War is a highly anticipated sequel to 2014's Shadow of Mordor, which introduced us to Talion and Celebrimbor and began their quest to take down the Dark Lord Sauron. At the end of the first game, Talion and Celebrimbor have resolved to craft a new ring of power and use it to overthrow Sauron. And at the beginning of this game, they have brought this plan to fruition, and now using this new ring, set out to take him down. The main character of the game is Talion, who is a human ranger, and at the beginning of the first game, he loses his family to Sauron, and he loses his own life, only to be saved by Celebrimbor, a ghostly elf from the Second Age, and he is also known as the Ringmaker, and he crafted, you guessed it, all of the rings of power. Also returning in this game is Ratbag, an orc you had dealings with in the first game. He had some comic relief.
He said, if you ever want to see your pet again, bring the Shrek-eaten Grave Walker.
Don't do that.
Oh, sorry.
You'll also face a Balrog, because it couldn't be a Lord of the Rings game without a Balrog. Oh, shit! Enemies in the game consist primarily of orcs and uruks, which anybody who's seen the movies should be familiar with. Also added to this roster in this game are Ologs, which seem to be intelligent trolls.
Like the blood of a Caragor, ate the heart of a Drake.
But they are very strong, and they make very powerful allies as well as enemies. Caragors, ghouls, and grogs are also all back, and they are joined by drakes, which, as you guessed, are flying, fire-breathing, reptilian creatures. Combat in Shadow of War is essentially the same as the combat was in Shadow of Mordor. As an approximation, you could imagine the combat in any of the Batman Arkham games. It's very similar to that. Building a hit streak, trying not to get hit yourself, counters, dodges, things like that. Talion is still equipped with his trusty sword and dagger, which he'll use interchangeably. You also have a bow or a hammer, depending on what you have equipped. They've added a glaive charge attack, which lets you do a large sweep in front of you. It's pretty effective if you're kind of feeling overwhelmed and you need to create some space. You'll also automatically equip the glaive when you mount a Caragor, which gives you a little bit more reach than just the sword was giving you in the first game. Focus is relatively unchanged. When you aim with a ranged weapon, you go into focus mode and time slows down. Using focus in midair will slow you down now. This is new. It allows you to set up really cool ambushes. It's a cool way to start a fight, and also if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, you can climb up the side of a building, vault off the back of it, and then you can shadow strike back into the flow of combat. I like this tactic a lot. Hit streaks are still present in this game, but they no longer determine when you're able to use executions and things like that. You now have a might bar, which slowly builds during combat. Taking hits will reduce it, so you still are punished for taking hits, but you don't completely lose the momentum you've been building towards one of these special attacks. The kinds of attacks you're building up to are executions or consumes, where you immediately drain the target, or also do a really cool explosion on yourself. You can tweak the type of damage that this explosion does. This is a good way to create space around yourself. Just like in the last game, you won't only be facing regular enemies, you'll also be facing off against captains in the Nemesis system. There's a field of captains with varying weapons, traits, and weaknesses, and your goal is to dominate captains and play them through the field to hopefully help them rise to power and ultimately depose the orc captains that are in your way and you can install your captains in their place. The Nemesis system works pretty much just like it did in the previous game. You dominate captains, you can send them on missions to power them up, and then you can send them to either infiltrate as a spy on a war chief you're trying to remove, or to defeat a captain that's supporting a war chief that you need to take care of. In order to have a captain infiltrate a war chief, you have to send them on basically a gladiator mission. I really don't care for this aspect of the game. The captains fight out the battle on their own, so it's basically a game of paper, rock, scissors. You just have to make sure that the captain that you're sending your captain against is either outright weaker or is vulnerable to your captain's abilities. But I found sitting and watching these 3 or 4 minute fights to really be underwhelming. You have no control. You're simply watching the 2 captains battle it out, and honestly, the AI is really bad at fighting itself. It's really not even fun to watch. But if you can play to the Pokemon logic and make sure that you have the rock to beat the scissors of the other captain, then it shouldn't really slow you down. Captains can now also be assigned as your bodyguard. They will be available for you to summon in the midst of combat, and they will fight for you. I like this feature a lot. I think that this adds an element of you've actually recruited your army, and not only are you manipulating the ranks of the orc army, but you actually have your own army that fights for you. But you should be careful because captains can betray you, even the one that you've selected as a bodyguard. I had it more than once where I set a trap, or I was just hunting down a captain that I wanted to kill, and then one of the captains that I brought with me betrays me, and now I'm fighting 2 against 1. Fortress battles have been added in Shadow of War. These are new. These are really cool. The scale of them is quite large. You get to see several captains on the field from both sides at once. I like these a lot. So the whole point of a fortress battle is the culmination of you trying to take over a region. You have fought to expose the warlord by defeating all of his war chiefs, either through subterfuge or you outright go out and kill them, things like that. You don't have to kill all of a overlord's war chiefs, but if you do, then he will have less bonuses during the siege, and it can make it significantly easier. But if you're up for the challenge, you can just go right at it head to head, all captains at once. When setting up a siege, you get to assign your captains to different war bands. Each war band has a couple of different potential buffs. Some of them directly counter some of the defensive buffs that a fortress might have, and others will just be advantages that maybe you prefer. So like I said, fortress battles are large scale. There's a lot going on. You do have objectives, though. There will be checkpoints. You need to take them one at a time, keeping your captains alive, defeating their captains, and you have to basically fight in these checkpoints. It's kind of like a mini King of the Hill game. Once you capture all of the checkpoints, the Overlord will be exposed. You'll go into their throne room and face down against them and any minions that they happen to have with them. These minions do keep spawning, so you can't really kill them all off and then just face the Overlord. You have to manage them and the Overlord at the same time. On some of the Overlords this was quite challenging, but on others it wasn't such a big deal, and it does help you keep building streaks so that you can use things like executions and stuff more easily. After you slay the opposing overlord, you've taken control of the fortress. You install an overlord of your own. They choose chieftains, and then you own that region. When you own a fortress, you're able to participate in online rankings where you try and capture other players' fortresses. This doesn't have any impact on their game. When they do it to you, it doesn't have any impact on yours. It's just it's kind of like an instanced version of their fortress, and you're trying to siege it. This gets ranked in online rankings, and you can receive like loot based on how well you perform. So I think that's all the main points. Overall, I give this game an 8 out of 10. I think it's got really solid gameplay. I think that the combat is really tight. It's really cinematic, fun to watch, really gruesome, as I'm sure you've noticed. The Nemesis system is still just as cool and unique as before. I think the addition of shaming is a cool thing, and I think at the heart of it all there still is this really strong system that they've created with the Nemesis system, where you get to fight characters that feel developed and real and unique to your game. I'm down with just about everything about this game. My one main gripe, which is not even that big a deal, is the inability to control your captain during those infiltration missions. I just thought that was a bit of a missed opportunity. I would have liked to see that a more developed aspect of the game. But that aside, great game. Can't recommend it enough. So that's it for this game review. Check back with me for the next one. I'm open to suggestions for the next one. I do have WWE 2K18 on back burner. I've got the new South Park game, Fractured But Whole, on back burner. Or maybe there's an older game you'd be interested in hearing my opinion on. So just let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.